Morning and welcome to this meeting of West Lothian Council's Council Executive. I'm Councillor Lawrence Fitzpatrick and I chair this executive. The meeting's broadcast live, recording will be available afterwards through the Council's website. I'm being assisted today by the Chief Executive, the Governance Manager and colleagues from Committee Services and IT. Attendees may be joining the meeting from another location. Everything said while microphones are live will be broadcast and recorded. Members are asked to be polite, respectful and patient. There is more information, including a privacy statement about meeting arrangements on the Council's website. An agenda has been published showing the business for today's meeting. I will introduce each item. Usually a Council officer will speak briefly about the report before councillors ask questions, have a discussion, make any decisions which are required. Councillors may leave the meeting from time to time where they have declared interests that prevent them from taking part. There will be a pause while that happens, and they will be invited back in for the next item of business. If the meeting proves to be a long one, it can be adjourned temporarily for a meal or comfort break, and I will say if that is going to happen. Thank you very much. Do we have any apologies for absence, please?
Chair, thank you. We have no apologies today. Councillor Janet Campbell has indicated that she will join online but hasn't done so as yet.
Okay. We are 10 o'clock and she does know the time, etc. Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest, please? Councillor Anne McMillan, please.
Thanks, Chair. It's just a transparency statement that I'm employed by Kirstine Sullivan, the Member of Parliament for Bathgate and Linlithgow. Thank you. Okay. The order of business is per the agenda and the items will be taken in chronological order. Can we confirm the draft minutes of the meeting of the Council Executive held on Tuesday, 13th January, please? Agreed. Thank you very much. And the first item of business is the Artificial Intelligence Policy. In Forest, please.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of today's report is to present West Lothian Council's draft Artificial Intelligence, betterly known as AI, policy for approval. This policy is a proactive step to ensure that as we embrace the opportunities AI offers for efficiency and service improvement, we do so responsibly, ethically, and in full compliance with legal and regulatory standards. The policy covers a broad range of AI technologies, including machine learning, natural language processing, and generative AI tools such as ChatGPT and Microsoft Copilot. It sets out clear principles for safe and transparent AI use. Chair, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ian. Are there any questions on this? Councillor Pauline Stafford, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Ian. Just a couple of questions, Ian. I just wondered, who will have the final accountability if an AI-supported decision is found to have caused harm or discrimination? Will it be the individual officer or head of service?
Leslie.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously what the policy does is set out the parameters that council officers will have to work within to ensure that decisions are taken appropriately, ensuring appropriate checks and balances. But obviously the council would ultimately be accountable for the actions of officers in the course of their duties. So there would be appropriate HR policies in place to manage any issues that might arise. So the use of artificial intelligence.
Thanks for that, Leslie. That's great. On page 5, it says that a human review must be conducted on AI outputs for biases, discrimination and inaccuracies. I just wondered, do we have any more details about how frequently bias testing will happen and who will be responsible for conducting that? And will residents have the right to request a human review of AI-supported decisions?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. The answer to both is yes. Obviously, the service will carry out regular reviews as part of that human in loop, or HIL, again, if we use the terminology within the industry. And yes, obviously, members of the public will have that right.
Thanks. And I think this is going to be a big part of all of our lives going forward. It says in the report that there's going to be no resource implications for this. Are we confident that we can cope with the capacity we've got in terms of training, monitoring and assessing our use of AI?
Leslie?
Yeah, as processes change to use AI as part of procedural arrangements, then we would be looking at the training support required around that. So plans to introduce AI will be supported with appropriate resources as we take things forward. And obviously that is likely to change just depending on what kind of things are happening in different service areas. But the plan for introduction will ensure that those factors are considered.
Okay, that's good. And just got a final question. Just given the pace of AI development, it says that the policy will be reviewed annually. Do you think that's often enough at this stage?
One of the things that we have discussed is to ensure there's regular reviews. Internally, this policy will be overseen by the Corporate Governance Board, so it will be subject to regular discussions. That board meets on a quarterly basis, so how the implementation of this policy and supporting technologies will be a factor at those meetings that are subject to discussion.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Leslie.
Councillor Sally Patel, please.
Yeah, thanks very much. Similarly, it's just a couple of questions. I think actually, first of all, I'm going to follow up on one of Councillor Stafford's, because something just occurred to me as she was asking her question. So if you're saying that, humans can request a review at any point if they've got any concerns, does this mean it's also going to change the complaints procedure? Are you going to change the wording to incorporate this?
Leslie?
A review of the complaints procedure as a result of the introduction of AI isn't something that we've considered at the moment, but it's certainly something that we can look at.
Okay. I think that would just be helpful for people, if they're going on to an FAQ, it's like, how do we work this into a complaint because we feel that AI has yeah. Okay. My primary question had been about safeguarding, really. I think we've all been aware there have been some high-profile cases recently. I'm thinking about the Maccabi Tel Aviv football match where a hallucination by AI about a football match that didn't even exist caused a decision by high-level policing. I'm wondering what safeguarding measures are being put in place to avoid that kind of thing. This is all so new. It just, the fact that a computer can have a hallucination, which then had an effect in the real world, is frankly terrifying to me. And I just want to know what safeguarding measures are in place.
One of the things that the policy requires is that all decisions are reviewed, that have an impact are reviewed by officers. So we have to, it's the officer's responsibility to ensure that the information that comes from any AI-driven technology is appropriate and is based on fact and that has the correct outcome. You're correct, it's very new for us, and I think it's something that we will need to ensure that there's appropriate scrutiny going forward to all of the technologies that we introduce, because ultimately the decision on any process sits with a council officer.
Okay, because I picked that up, 4.3 in the accuracy in the policy, which is great, and that lays it out. But I suppose then my question is this actually going to save us time, money, resources if we've got to physically check every single thing that it produces? Are we sure that this is best practice for the council going forward? We have examples of where the use of AI can really deliver service improvements, particularly around some chat bots and call answering services. We've obviously also got a pilot running in social policy at the moment around the provision of notes for social workers. So these things are saving considerable time because of they're resolving administrative processes. So I think, it is early stages for us, and I think what we need to be cautious of going forward is that technologies that we choose to introduce are robust. Just a couple more. I'm assuming, in fact, it's basically the same question. I'm assuming that as you develop this, you're not doing it in isolation. So there is guidance coming from COSLA. You're working alongside other councils just to make sure that you're sharing experiences and that we do develop the best policy for us and I suppose nationally as well for all local authorities.
Absolutely. We are one of not the first, but one of the
a small number of councils at the moment that will have a policy in place if this is agreed at this stage. We think it's important to set out those parameters at an early stage. The policy, subject to review, will take account of things that are happening at national level. The Digital Office is particularly looking at AI and policy procedures across the 32 councils. There's also work ongoing around artificial intelligence use in health and social care. So they have been working with COSLA, the Digital Office, and just how these impact on some of the procedural arrangements in some of these more complex areas. So it's something that is being reviewed nationally, and we are taking account of any changes that would happen as a result of that.
Okay, and just finally, I mean, we're in the foothills of this technology, but it seems to be accelerating so quickly. It's just been such a rapid change, even in like the 2 or 3 years that I've even been aware of things like ChatGPT. Are you confident that the policy you have produced is flexible enough to be changed as the technology changes, because it does so rapidly?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we've got here are key principles, and one of the things that's important is for us at the moment is to ensure that officers understand their responsibilities. So yes, I think as things progress, we'll keep it under review and can change and as required going forward.
Okay, that's lovely. Thanks both very much.
Thank you. Councillor Logue, please. Danny Logue.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just going to ask you, Leslie. I mean, I've used AI in my work, etc. And what I found is that you use it for checking things, just to kind of tidy things up. I've used a couple of different versions of it. Problem is, when you ask it a question, you know it's wrong. And it's because there's that much rubbish that's on the internet and in the news and things like that. It's all kind of fake stuff, and people put on stuff that are just absolute nonsense. It comes back with that answer, and that's the problem with it. And I find that it's okay if you know the answer to it, but you just need a reminder. But if you don't know the answer, you're left in the dark, because it can give you something that's totally false.
Is that your question?
The question is, how do you stop that happening when you've got a bot answering a question for you on an issue or gas compliance or something like that?
Yeah, I suppose that's the point about the professional standards that we're setting out. So as an officer, you are still responsible for making sure that you might understand a process or a particular aspect of the law. So whilst, it might be useful for, as an example, for a solicitor to be able to summarise some complex pieces of the law, they still have to know and understand all of that in advance of doing that, so that they can confirm what they have summarised using something like Copilot or ChatGPT is factually correct.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Doesn't seem to be any comments. Doesn't seem to be. Happy to agree with the recommendation. Thank you very much. We now move on to item 6, the construction of the new Craigshill Primary School in Livingston. And we have David Baird, please.
Good morning, Chair. The purpose of this report is to update Council Executive on the project to deliver the new Craigshill Primary School, and to seek delegated approval for the Director of Finance and Property Services to conclude the necessary legal agreements for the construction of the school as set out in Section B of the report. Members will note from Section D of the report that an extensive exercise has been completed by officers, our designers and contractors to refine and develop the design for the school. As a consequence, this has allowed the necessary due diligence to be completed in the costs to deliver the school, and members will note that this has led to an increase in overall cost to £25.8 million. This is primarily due to higher than expected demolition costs for the former Riverside Primary School and also unknown ground conditions. The new cost, if approved, will be locked as a fixed price lump sum in the DBDA contract, thus de-risking the project for the Council beyond this sum. Members will also note from Section D of the report that the project is scheduled to start on site in April 26, if approved, and be completed for the beginning of the new academic term in August 2027. In conclusion, Chair, I would ask the Council Executive to approve the recommendations in Section B of the report, and I'm happy, as always, to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, David. Do we have any questions, please? Councillor Damien Doran-Timpson, please.
Thank you, Chair. David, thank you for this. A DBDA contract, with historical, and I'm presuming this, can you confirm this is a fixed price contract?
Yes, it is fixed price, yes.
Right. So that on page 4, when it says it significantly de-risks the potential for cost increases, there is no cost increases that will at risk at all, is there? Because of the DBA contract, there cannot be any increases brought in at all by the contractor.
The only way there'd be an increase in price where should the council choose to increase price, as in there's something come up that the council wanted to change the specification. That's the only circumstance that would happen.
Yeah. Obviously, if we change the spec of the design, then absolutely there's an increase there. But it says it's just a wording. They're saying we significantly de-risk. There's no risk whatsoever under a DBDA contract, is there?
Not as long as we don't change that specification.
Yeah, as long as we don't change the spec. That's great. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Any other questions? Councillor Orr, please.
Thanks, Chair. The report states that the demolition costs increased quite considerably, over £1 million. Can you explain why that happened, please, to give us a bit more context?
Yeah, of course. Riverside Primary was one of the first built in Livingston, and at that stage much of the construction industry was using asbestos routinely. In addition to that, we had the rack panels, which obviously was what led to the school being demolished. So as a consequence of the rack panels themselves and the lot of asbestos which was contained within the school due to its construction, there was an awful lot of things we had to do to remove that asbestos safely and demolish the building. So there was a combination of those two things that led to the increased price.
Okay, thanks, David.
Councillor Damien Dorn-Timson again, please.
Yeah, apologies, Chair. David, I know we were successful, the council was successful with the LEAP funding at the last phase. On item 6 on page 2, or on note 6, page 2, it says that it's anticipated that the funding will be met on the LEAP programme and that the final award will be in March 2026. When we say anticipated and final will be awarded, is this 100%? If not, where's the money going to come from, or what happened then? And just a bit of detail around that. Thank you.
Yeah, excuse me. There's a set of criteria set out which generate the funding which comes to council through the LEAP programme. Those criteria are set, but there's also some criteria where you're looking. Excuse me, a wee drink of water here. Things like the demolitions and the ground conditions and elements like that are open to interpretation and discussion with Scottish Government and through the Scottish Futures Trust. So those are the conversations which continue, and we're looking to see obviously if there's any opportunity to gain additional funding from that, and we've had some already. So that's the kind of conversation we would continue to have.
Thanks, David. So there's no concern from the council that the funding won't be forthcoming?
No. The funding will come. As I say, it's just there's some small elements which we still have to finalise, and we're having productive conversations along those lines.
David, your definition of small may be different to mine.
Yes.
Could you give me an idea of how small sums we're talking of?
I don't have the particular figures here, but I think what I'm trying to say is in terms of the elements of demolition and groundworks and things like that, in terms of the overall construction price, they are small. So I don't make light of the amount of money that's involved there, but they're not going to be significant in terms of the overall project. But obviously, if there's any money we can reclaim for the council's proportion, then we'll seek to do that. And obviously, we're having those conversations with Scottish Futures Trust, and they are productive to see if there's any elements which can come back to us.
Understand, and thank you for that. And yeah, I appreciate on the bigger scheme of things with the size of this project, there will be relatively small sums, but still it's potential that there still could be into the hundreds of thousands of pounds maybe that the council will have to fund for this if it isn't forthcoming from LEAP.
No, I think the monies we have noted here are the council's contribution, and the budget is set in terms of what the council will have to contribute. Should any further money come back, then that would effectively be the council gaining money which we wouldn't have to spend. So the council's accounted for, and there's a budget set for that.
Understand, that's great. Thanks, David. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Pauline Stafford, please.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, David. I've just got another question just about the jump in the budget by the 1.8 million, and you explained a little bit about the demolition costs going up. Did we not anticipate that? Because I presume as a council, we're probably one of the most experienced councils in dealing with RAC by this point. So was that really unanticipated? And is there anything around can you explain a wee bit more about what the ground conditions are that have made it more challenging?
Of course. In terms of the building itself, sometimes these projects, you'll have your best estimate of what they will take to demolish something. But until you actually get into the project, it's very hard to actually quantify that. And that's in terms of, how much asbestos is in the building. And you won't actually know that until you start stripping it back and breaking it apart. And whilst we will do demolition surveys, at the initial stages when budgets are set, you won't necessarily have that information. So that's something that comes organically as you're progressing through a demolition project, and there is really no way to know that right at the start. Obviously, we do have a good estimate, and that's what we had. The rack panels as well can be complicated in terms of how you actually have to take them off, and what asbestos may or may not be attached to them as well from the bonded coatings and such likes. So you have to actually get into the process of taking the building apart to fully appreciate those costs. In terms of the ground conditions, whilst there was a school obviously on the site, with the new building is going in a slightly different position on the site, so we have to account for that. It's a different shape and configuration as well, being squarer rather than the more longer building which was there before. So the ground conditions have got to support that building in its new location. You're looking at different ground levels, see if to adjust the ground levels to account for that as well. And we found some contamination in the soil which we've had to deal with and remove as well. So it's all these types of things that have to be taken into consideration. And you don't actually know until you start doing a full site investigation on the site or a full demolition project. Obviously, we do have good estimates, but it's hard to account for these things fully beforehand, unfortunately.
Thanks for that explanation.
Councillor Danny Logue, please.
Thank you, Chair.
I would speak direct to the mic.
Thank you, Chair. Unfortunately, my question was asked. It was about the ground conditions. I'd just like to look forward to the completion date, and I'm sure the councillors from my area are all looking forward to the people of Craigshill. Thank you very much.
Councillor Pauline Orr, please.
Thanks, Chair. Just a wee additional question about the ground conditions there. Have you had to put in any additional measures following the asbestos removal and the contamination before commencing the build to ensure that it's safe from those incidents that you found?
The final design encompasses that and accounts for all these elements. So the design about how we put the foundations in and how we treat the ground is all part of that £25.8 million. So the site will be safe for use after that, and that's how we've got to the situation we're in and why we're now confident we can proceed with the project. We obviously have to make sure that we're aware of any asbestos on sites and such likes, and anything that is remaining on site, should there be any, would be accounted for in the council's asbestos registers going forward, and we would deal with that appropriately like we would any other building we have.
Okay, thanks, David.
Are there any other questions? Doesn't seem to be any comments that haven't already been made. Councillor Damien Doran-Timson, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Obviously, I'm sure like everyone else will, certainly in the ward, welcome the step forward to get this new primary school for Craigshill, well overdue. It's been much needed. I know there's been challenges to get the funding in and delays, which was unfortunate that occurred from the Scottish Government, but at least we're getting there now, and I'm sure everyone will be appreciative of when the building's up and running and delivering the education that's needed for the Craigshill area. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any further comments? Doesn't seem to be happy to agree with the recommendation. Thank you very much. And we now move on to item 7. Scottish Budget 2026 and Local Government Finance Settlement 2026-27. Alistair Black, please.
Thank you, Chair. On the 13th of January, the Scottish Government published the draft budget for 2026-27 alongside the Provisional Local Government Finance Settlement. At a national level, the settlement provides a cash increase in general revenue funding for councils and a reduction in capital funding compared to the previous year. Total core uncommitted revenue funding for local government for day-to-day services increases by £234.9 million. The national settlement includes funding linked to specific commitments, and these form part of the overall allocation made available to local authorities. Turning to West Lothian, the provisional recurring allocation for 26-27 is 500.3 million. That represents an estimated 12.2 million increase in core funding compared with 25-26. That equates to a 0.3% increase in real terms. Approximately 6.1 million is provided for national commitments. That includes the real living wage and other policy-linked areas for capital funding. West Lothian's general capital grant is expected to be 11.3 million. That's 1.7 million lower than budgeted for 26-27. Taking account of the settlement, updated cost projections and previously agreed savings, the Council currently faces an estimated budget gap of 15.4 million across 2026-27 and 27-28. This reflects updated assumptions, as set out in the paper, covering pay, demographic change, demand-led pressures, capital financing and other operational costs. Officers are now updating both the capital and revenue budget reports for consideration by Council later this month. As agreed in previous financial planning, additional recurring saving options are being identified to support the requirement to set a balanced budget and will be considered in further detail over the course of this week. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alistair. Are there any questions? Councillor Sally Patel, please.
Yes, thank you very much. I suppose I've got a few questions that I'll run through if that's all right. But I suppose my initial question, and I'm really sorry to put this so bluntly, how could you get this so wrong? In November, we were predicted a 9.7 or 9.4 gap, and that's what we had been working on. Last Thursday, it was revealed that it's £15.4 million. I don't understand where that extra £6 million has come from, how you could have been so wildly inaccurate, especially now we have, 3 weeks to find those savings? So I suppose that's my first question. And again, apologies for being so blunt.
Thanks, Chair. So as we set out previously, the 9.7 million gap was the figure considered by the Council in February 2025 as part of the budget setting process. We've indicated that we expected that gap to increase once we took account of the funding settlement and the increased pressures. At section 10D.10 of the report, I've set out the drivers that have moved the 9.7 million to 15.4 million. So taking into account the Scottish settlement of the 12.2 million in additional revenue, that is more than offset by the range of demand pressures that the Council is facing. That's consistent with the pressures that are faced across the wider local government sector in Scotland, and the analysis set out at D10 sets out step by step the increases in pressures alongside the increases in funding.
Okay, so my follow-up then, specifically here in West Lothian, what are the pressures that have led to such a massive gap? Specifically, which areas? Tell me which services.
So the pressures that have increased the gap for West Lothian Council include our updated social policy demographics, so that's increased demand, complexity and cost. It includes social policy unfunded recurring pressures. It includes a recognition of providing council tax reduction to people on low incomes. It includes recurring budget pressures and homelessness, social work for children, and it includes increased insurance premiums. Taking all those together and setting that against the increased grant funding that we've received is what brings us from the 9.7 million before to the 15.4 million that we're facing just now. And that sets out the updated scale of pressure that we need to address to deliver a balanced budget over the next 2 years.
Okay. I understand that social care funding that was asked for by COSLA was about £750 million less for the whole of Scotland. Can I ask what measures you as West Lothian Council officers have taken to remedy that in the light of the local government settlement?
So, Chair, as Councillor Patel's noted, COSLA had requested funding of 750 million more for social care. COSLA's request was for 16 billion in total for local government, and the final settlement that local government has received has amounted to 15 billion. In terms of the measures that have been taken, it may be more appropriate for social policy colleagues to comment on that.
Okay.
Could I ask Joe McPherson? to comment, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. Undoubtedly, adult social work and social care services face increasing pressures nationally and locally. Most of our budget in terms of adult social care is spent on direct care provision for people, 92% of it. And as has been indicated, there are significant demand pressures and challenges. And when I mean that, I am talking about people whose circumstances are difficult, who need more care and who need care for longer. Adult social work and social care services are directed by the IJB. The IJB has recently undergone a public consultation where there were 8 budget saving measures totalling approximately £10.5 million of actions to try and bring our pressures under control and deliver ongoing savings. And they present significant challenge in terms of delivery, and these measures will be considered in detail by the IJB at its budget setting. I'm happy to provide any further information, Chair, if that would be helpful.
Joe, thank you, because I have been in touch with you about this. So thank you very much for the information that you have already provided to me. I guess I am obviously concerned because I'm not sure how quickly these budget saving measures will have an impact. I'm not sure if you can lay that out, because do I understand right that the IJB meeting that will decide this is not going to be until March?
So the IJB budget setting is at the end of March, but I would like to say in relation to the budget saving options that are out for consultation, none of them are easy. Some of them present significant risks to people and present significant risks, and I have to flag them up as the Chief Social Work Officer for this council and also as a professional lead and non-voting member of the IJB. And there are options that my officers are now having to consider, which is looking at measures to try and manage demand. And what I mean by that is measures that are looking at potentially putting a cap on the value of care that we are providing for people, potentially looking at measures of that will introduce delay for people. Our services are only provided for adults and older people where there are substantial and critical risks to their safety and well-being. As you know, we are consulting on measures that look to potentially affect and reduce the availability of day service support for adults with disability. And we are obviously looking also at measures which look at our contracting and commissioning arrangements and our hourly rates, which has the potential to destabilise the market of care, which is strong in West Lothian, and we are very reliant on providers of care to support our older people. So the IJB, whether it meets next week, in 2 months' time or whenever, will be faced with incredibly difficult and impossible decisions to make that will have consequences and impact. We will do everything as professional social workers and myself as the Chief Social Work Officer to mitigate the risks. But some of these actions we will find very, very difficult to mitigate, and I have to be transparent and open in this chamber about that, Chair.
Thank you, Joe.
I just want to say thank you very much as well. Thank you for being so open and for explaining that so clearly. I think that it really does lay bare the decisions that we are having to face as a council as a whole in the coming weeks. So thank you very much, Joe. I do have a few further questions, if that's all right, Chair.
This is what democracy is all about.
Thank you. So on page 8 of the report, with regards to education, it's just the paragraph above D.10. It says, you know, the Cabinet Secretary wants to build on the increase in teacher numbers, improve the pupil-teacher ratio, and then the next section is about the reduction in class contact time. I've never been entirely clear how that works, but I just want some assurance, please, that it's going to be fully funded, if that's okay.
Greg Welsh, please.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of any further reduction to teacher contact time, the Council's position has consistently been that it is a Scottish Government policy commitment, and therefore the delivery of that is and our expectation would be that it would come fully funded. In terms of the financial implications for the council, should that not be fully funded, there would be an annual revenue consequence of approximately £9 million to the council in terms of how to deliver that. So therefore there is a clear basis for our view as officers, certainly, and advice to members that commitment should come fully funded from Scottish Government.
Okay, and just so that I'm clear, Greg, the additional £1 million to support pilot approaches, is that for West Lothian or is that the whole of Scotland? And are we part of the pilot?
Chair, the £1 million outlined there is in the Scottish Government's budget. There's no detail as to any identification of a pilot local authority, and there's been no discussion with officers in West Lothian about participating in any pilot.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then moving down to D10, and I don't know who this is directed at, Chair, sorry, but the living wage, the gap. So COSLA says that it's not being fully funded. Can somebody please tell me what the living wage gap here in West Lothian is?
Alistair?
The living wage gap in West Lothian amounts to approximately £500,000. This is an approach that's been taken by the Scottish Government so that the national living wage element of the living wage will not be funded by government this year. That's expected to be accommodated by employers in line with their statutory duties. The funding for the living wage is the difference between the living wage and the national living wage, so the bit above the statutory obligation. It amounts to 500,000 approximately for West Lothian Council.
Okay. Is it possible to put that in writing somewhere just so that we are as clear as possible and it's easier for us going forward?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay, great. And then on page 9, we're talking, just the penultimate bullet point there is about non-domestic rates. And I know that we have discussed this before, but I couldn't find any detail on it. Can you tell me, with the conclusion of the community centre review and a number of the community centres moving to council-operated model, that I believe would mean that they are then liable for non-domestic rates. Can you please tell me what that financial implication is for West Lothian and whether that has been factored into the budget?
Chair, I need to confirm that as well. I'll come back in writing on that point.
Okay.
So are you going to circulate that to members when you've got it?
Yes, I'll circulate that to members.
Okay. And then I just had a question on table 9, which is on that same page, page 9. And I was just looking at the service pressures and developments and then at the core Scottish grant funding. And I'm just assuming that, you know, it's 11.8 for service pressure this year and 12.2 for the funding. And then next year it's like 0.2 and 0. Is that just because you just don't know? Is that why? Because we're not there and we're not, we don't have a crystal ball, sadly.
So the 11.8 is recurring, so that flows through into 27-28. We've updated 27-28 with the additional increases and decreases in relation to each line. We will be able to update the 27-28 position more firmly as we get closer to 27-28. So there's more of an element of judgment in 27-28 than 26-27. In terms of this table, what you see in 26-27 is replicated in 27-28, subject to the marginal movements that are set out in the 27-28 column itself.
Okay, all right, that is very clear. Thank you very much, and thanks very much, Chair, for letting me ask so many questions.
It's quite all right. Any further questions, please? Any comments? Councillor Orr, please. Pauline Orr.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say thank you very much to Alistair for bringing this to Council Executive today. I know that the timescale involved has been exceptionally tight in order to do that, and we are then going to be dealing with those pressures to fix our own budget going forward by the end of February. But I'd also just like to thank Jo McPherson there for her input during discussion. I know that you know, Jo was very, very transparent. She's very, very passionate about her role, and the risks and challenges that she is facing are absolutely phenomenal, and ones that in another world we wouldn't necessarily want to be taken. So I just want to thank her for the hard work that she's doing with her service to protect the most vulnerable people in our society.
Any further comments? Yes. Councillor Susan Mannion, please.
Thank you. Just to reflect Councillor Orr's thanks to Alistair and the team and all the managers who've been working on this for some time. And I think just to clarify the reality of the position is that having been my understanding and experience is that the detail of the position financially has been discussed through each PDSP, because each PDSP in each service area is affected by the emerging financial picture that came through the year as there became increasing concerns about additional demands and additional pressures. So I'm content that the PDSP structure has operated effectively to ensure appropriate oversight of the financial position over the year, and then ultimately through CP&R as well. So I'm surprised at Councillor Pattle's surprise at the scale of the position, because to me that's been absolutely clear. And in relation to how the issues have been taken forward, as much officers across each of the PDSPs in each of the service areas have been working on pieces of work in order to mitigate the effects of the additional demands. But we also have to recognise that in this financial year, there was a particular additional issue of the very short timescales that everybody had to operate in. So anyway, that's my comment. Thank you.
Anyone else? If there's no one, I'd like to comment. I'm very gravely concerned about the potential adverse impact on the Integration Joint Board budget. Clearly there's a gap, 2.9 million. And I appreciate that our highly professional and committed social work team, led by Jo McPherson, does their absolute utmost to ensure that people who are the most vulnerable get the level of care which they desperately need. And some of these people, mainly elderly, but some of them are young people who are visited by hospital home, young people who are under 50 who are dying and require that approach for drugs, etc., almost on a daily basis. And that saves the NHS money. But I have grave concern about our ability, not commitment, about the ability with the money available to meet the very high levels of statutory requirement for people. And it can be the case that we could lose people, or we could be challenged in court on this. Anyway, I've said my bit. Can we agree the recommendation in the report, please? Thank you very much. And we move on to item 8, Edinburgh Road Bathgate, additional waiting, loading restrictions and the redetermination of carriageway to cycle track. Graham Burton, please.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to seek approval to commence the statutory procedures to install additional waiting and loading restrictions and to redetermine part of the carriageway to a segregated two-way cycle track on Blackburn Road, Edinburgh Road and King Street in Bathgate. Section D1 of the report provides background information as to how the project has been developed to date, including information on how the project is to be funded.
Proposed installation of additional weighting restrictions required for the project is included in section D2 of the report, with supplementary drawings included in Appendix 1 defining the extents. The introduction of these restrictions will ensure the proposed segregated cycle route is used only by cyclists and will prevent obstructive parking on the remaining carriageway. The introduction of the segregated two-way cycle track also requires redetermination of the existing carriageway from a road carriageway to a 2-metre wide two-way cycle track. The information relating to the traffic regulation order for the redetermination is included in section D3 of the report, with supplementary drawings included in Appendix 2. In conclusion, Chair, this report seeks approval to proceed with the statutory procedures necessary to allow these proposals to progress to provide a safer environment for all users and to promote a segregated cycle track, enhancing active travel routes in Bathgate. Chair, happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there any questions, please? Councillor Pauline Stafford, please.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you, Graham. I'm delighted to see this coming forward, so thanks for bringing it today. Just for clarity, controlled pedestrian crossing, is that just traffic lights?
Yes, signalised crossing for pedestrians.
And that'll be in place of the islands which have been removed?
Yes.
Will that improve safety, do you think, in your opinion?
Yes, at the moment all crossing points are uncontrolled, so pedestrians will have the opportunity to stop traffic to be able to cross safely.
That's great. And I know that it's taken a wee while to get to the design, finished and on this project, but I just wondered how you're going to review the implementation of it once it's installed to look at the positive impacts and any unintended consequences.
As part of any of these projects, working with Transport Scotland, there is a requirement to go back and review via traffic counts or anything like that, the success of the project. So that will be something will be looked at further down the line.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Any comments? Doesn't seem to. Councillor Stafford again.
Just a quick comment, if that's okay, just to say thank you so much for bringing this report forward. It's been a while in the pipeline and the condition of the road has deteriorated quite considerably over that time, so I'm really pleased to see that both jobs are going to be done at the same time to minimise any disruption. I think this will make a huge difference, but I think it's also important to point out that this is Transport Scotland funding ring-fenced for this purpose, so it's not putting any additional strain on local budgets.
Thank you very much. Any further final comments? Okay, I'm happy to agree the recommendation in the paper. Thank you very much. And finally today, we move on to the draft National Climate Change Plan consultation response. Peter Rogers, please.
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to present to Council Executive a proposed response to the consultation on the draft National Climate Change Plan and seek approval for its submission to the Scottish Government. The National Climate Change Plan is a statutory document that the Scottish Government is required to produce by the Climate Change Scotland Act of 2009. The consultation on this iteration of the plan opened for responses on the 6th of November 2025 and closed on the 29th of January. The Council has, however, been granted an extension until today to allow the consultation response to go through the relevant committee processes. The proposed response, which is attached as Appendix 1, was presented to the meeting of the Environment and Sustainability PDSP on the 27th of January, where no additions or amendments were requested. Chair, Council Executive is asked to note the contents of the report and consultation and to approve the submission of the response attached as Appendix 1 to the Scottish Government, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Peter. Are there any questions? Councillor Damien Doran-Timpson, please.
Thanks, Chair. Even in the now revised downward targets for renewable energy, they're still unrealistic. And I think we're talking about they'll be about 25% short in what they're trying to produce in renewable energy. So how on earth, well, pardon the pun, how on earth is this going to be met? And how are we sort of, I can see part of the answers in there, but how are we directing the government to realise that the targets are unrealistic and they need to change direction rapidly?
Chair, I think there's reference in there to how renewable energy could be increased, but taking into account the sensitivities around land management and the impacts that might have on biodiversity. It's not really for the council to decide. That's obviously national policy and UK policy in terms of how that's brought forward. There is pressure on the government and others down to NESO, the new National Energy Systems Operator, who are helping to facilitate that. There is a lot of proposals that the council executive and members will be aware of around battery storage and other aspects of energy storage, including hydrogen, which will all factor into that mix. But yeah, it's a national policy to decide on those overall targets. The expansion of offshore wind and the relaxing of some regulations around onshore wind, including change in potential planning guidance. There's a separate consultation out at the moment about increasing the limits as to what councils can actually approve, which I believe will come to a future committee. These will all have an impact on the overall amount of renewable generation.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I think we accept that there's, these targets are just not correct. They won't be met, and they're just put down to look good at certain times of political cycles. Apologies if I've missed this in here. Has there been any mention or questions about the impact of rising energy costs to the public caused by some of these policies and targets?
That's not contained within the consultation on the climate change plan, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Any other questions? Doesn't seem to be any comments. Councillor Patel, please.
Thanks very much. It was literally just to say thank you very much. This is such a well-constructed response because you're really highlighting the risks to vulnerable groups that we deal with on a daily basis, because we know how hard these just transition targets can impact vulnerable groups in parts of West Lothian. The way that you lay out the risks to agriculture as well, and particularly to transport, because West Lothian is so poorly served for transport links. So I just wanted to say thank you very much. This is such a great document to be able to refer to when we are lobbying for things like buses. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pauline Stafford, please.
Thanks. Yeah, I'd just echo Sally's point. Thank you. It was a really interesting document to read. It's really comprehensive, and I think it looks at the challenges and the opportunities for West Lothian as a whole. I think it is really important to protect the most vulnerable communities as we move to net zero. But having just had a quick read of the National Security Assessment on biodiversity loss and the ecosystem collapse that was released last week, after Labour tried to bury it, I think we're now at the point where we have to accept that actually this is getting this right is essential to our prosperity. It's not a case of net zero nonsense or political rhetoric. This is really about the prosperity and national security of our country. So it's a really great document. Thank you.
Any further comments? Doesn't seem to be. Do we agree with the recommendation in the paper? People are agreeing. Thank you, and thank you for your attendance.